Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by bettors.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. It is the Monday of the off season, which means tennis TV is streaming at my house, and I will be distracted as we watch the great men of the ATP Tour take on the Acapulco Open, the Abierto Mexicano Telcel Open.
The Telcel.
Yes.
That's like Verizon down there.
Abierto Mexicano Telcel. The women's tour is in our friend Sports Dogma's neck of the woods there in Guadalajara. And
Doha.
This is a fun time to see. This is a fun time of year where I really start to get a little bit more into the tennis. The South American swing doesn't really do it for me anymore. The indoor European swing doesn't really do it for me anymore. But I like this Acapulco as the build up to Indian Wells and Miami, and then the European clay swing coming up is just an absolute delight to handicap, and it's perfect time. Like it's right during you wake up in the morning, action's already going. You can watch through lunchtime, and then you can get on with your day. So it's and in our little preamble, we were talking this is a stacked field for the Acapulco Open. We have Rafa Nadal, of course, your Aussie Open champion. Daniel Medvedev, your Aussie Open runner-up. Alexander Zverev, your second choice to win the Aussie Open, who had a massively disappointing ouster.
He was priced like he should have done well.
Yeah. So it's
best of three here though, so I have supreme confidence in him.
Yeah, it's quite hot too. Taylor Swift's just absolutely drenched right now. For whatever reason, and Rafa Nadal really, really cares about this one weird random 500-point tournament. Just out of curiosity, Andy, what would you guess out of all of the Masters 1000s? What is Rafa Nadal's poorest?
Cincinnati.
Record? No, he's okay in Cincinnati. He's not great. He's won 1 out of 12. His win-loss there is 67%.
Tirana, Montreal. Is he okay at that one?
He also cares about the Canadian Open. He's got 5 titles at the Canadian Open. The Coupe Roger.
What's the Asian one? Singapore? Or what am I trying to think of?
Shanghai. He's won 1 title out of 14 tries at Shanghai. It is the Miami
Obviously,
Open.
I'm not.
It is
13. We just said
13.
God, I
he
forget
has yet to
1,000.
bring home the hardware in Miami. And actually, if you don't know, they moved the Miami Open. It used to be in beautiful Biscayne Bay, a tennis tournament that was fraught with iguanas. The iguanas were falling out of the trees onto the players.
Well, I don't know
you know this,
fraught.
right? Well, they were a nuisance to the tournament, and they moved it from Biscayne Bay to where the Dolphins play, Hard Rock. The Hard Rock Stadium in Miami is now where they play the Miami Open, which is coming up. So it's tennis season for me, and it's a nice break, honestly, from football. A nice break from NBA. How has your transition gone from caring about the NFL 24/7 and doing an entire week of build up for the Super Bowl, and then having like a vacuum in your life last week of no football?
It has been nice. It gave me a little time to tighten up a few things in college basketball, even though it looks like the Holy Cross is losing by 100 points right now. That is the thing about betting.
Holy Cross.
Betting about some of those underdogs. Sometimes they just lose by 1 million. That's why it's a volume game. But no, it's been great to have some time on that. It's been great to have some time to look into some golf stuff as we kind of ramp up into the meatier part of the season, even though this week is not a meaty tournament whatsoever. It's still one I enjoy watching, especially with the amount of golf coverage that you can get on ESPN Plus right now. Yeah, the UFC has there's been some good fights. There's some good pay-per-views coming up in March and April. We're definitely going to touch on that with a guest or two. And I even really, really enjoyed. My daughter's really into basketball, so we watched most of the NBA All-Star festivities, including the horrible. And Noops and I ripped it apart already this morning. The dunk, like my wife.
checked out of this ever since they fixed that one with the Kia All-Star game. You know, the Kia
bring that up.
the fix was in with Blake Griffin. I tuned out to that. That was my last dunk contest. I was done after that.
I mean, we watched the skills comp was great. The 3-point contest is always fun, especially just wild that a big man who shoots really well was able to win it there. But the dunk contest, so like I brought this up the other day. We watched Jaws, and then I turned it off.
The movie with the shark?
The shark. And then I flipped back to the cable box and DirecTV. I said, I go right to the sports channel, see what's on. And they were showing all the dunk contests. And I've told the story, like they had the Vince Carter one on. And my daughter and I watched the whole thing pretty much. It was awesome. Like doing it's over, like seeing it just chills. And like it was a really good dunk contest.
Great
so, like,
gift, by the way.
In her head, like the dunk contest had been built up because she watched the 2001. And then we sat and watched this year's, and my wife was getting mad because they're explaining, they're like getting deep into the weeds. Well, that wasn't technically an attempt because he didn't raise his. Like my wife's like, this is awful. Like every time she's
steamed, she's like, pairs figure skating is on prime time, Andy. We could be watching the Russians and the Chinese in the battle royale. Pairs figure skating, I'm not joking, it was fucking electric. It was super good. And glad I watched that instead of the
it stunk. Like people in my house are mad. Like, why does he get to run at the basket 300 times? And it stunk. And otherwise the All-Star game was fun. Curry lighting it up for a while was really cool to watch him just get hot. And
he scored 50.
It was, he just couldn't miss a three for a little bit there. And LeBron hitting the last shot in Cleveland was neat. MJ getting a bigger a round of cheers than LeBron at halftime was fun. So
I think
overall, like I'm over most All-Star games. I think the NBA one is the one I'm most likely to watch, and it still kind of stinks. So I'm happy to get back to normal college or normal basketball.
Is LeBron have you looked at the awards market betting at all? Is LeBron a good bet to win a Razzie for Space Jam too? I
thought he was fine.
You thought he was fine? Oh, okay. I've heard buzz he wasn't that bad. Get a Razzie.
Maybe I think those awards are just kind of like who can we give this to that'll have the most social media buzz when we give it. So I mean, you're probably right. If you want to bet on him, I think I would do it.
There was a whole category of bad Bruce Willis movies that I had never heard of from last year. Did you see that?
No, that guy's getting some work. He must owe some money somewhere or something.
He must, yeah. He must. He's the Phil Mickelson of the A-list actor circuit. The Academy Awards aren't until the end of March. They keep moving these around for some reason.
I never know.
They are March 27th, 2022. So there's no rush to get down on our Academy Award bets. Did you see who's hosting the Academy Awards?
Yorgos.
No.
That's a gambling Twitter callback. I think is it Amy Schumer?
It is. It's a Regina Hall.
That's not how you say
Amy
it.
Schumer and Wanda Sykes. Yikes. Maybe it will be entertaining, but that is that's a dicey trio. Wanda Sykes hasn't been relevant in a long time. I'm not sure who Regina Hall is, and Amy Schumer, I think she does a cooking show now. Yeah, yikes. All right,
I would just get Billy Crystal every year, but that's me.
We'll find some Oscars winners. You want to see Billy Crystal? You're wearing the demo now, or we want to see Billy Crystal hosting the Oscars and the halftime show for the Super Bowl.
Best NBA ref of all time, Billy Crystal.
God damn. He has done some great things. All right. Well, really, I think we ought to do a hard reset here. Talk a little bit about the sports weekend, and then we can dive into our main topic today, where we were going to be basically just kind of navel gazing about how we go about building power rankings when we start a new sport, because I feel like that would be somewhat useful to our audience who is now pivoting from, maybe they had a good model, but they helped them win in the NFL this season. And now they're pivoting to trying to figure out how to apply themselves in some new area like golf or Daytona, or NASCAR racing or something like that, right? Like there's a lot of correlate, a lot of off-season sports you can attack. You build a baseball model if you want. It may not be useful this year. But
I don't know if I spend a lot of time on
that. But yeah, we'll cover a little bit of our thoughts on how you go about getting started. We'll share some of our favorite resources for for where you go about getting some information. And but before we get in there, we got to reset the Olympics. Team USA, Andy. Did you see how that played out?
Snuck in there. Yeah, that was tight
right under the wire.
I mean, just old people winning medals was surprising. So that didn't help.
What's the deal? What is this that I end up with these positions on these Olympic markets that come down to half of a gold one way or the other? And it's a sweat for the last entire 2 days of the Olympics. I was literally refreshing markets trying to see, do we have a speed skater that I got to worry about here? Do we have a, fill in the blank that I got to worry about here? And lo and behold, USA lands 8. It was kind of a weird highs and lows for us. Obviously, the snowboard cross, the Lindsey Jacobellis double gold was the highlight for Team USA.
Yeah.
The low light was probably our alpine skiing team bringing home one rando silver. It was not a great look for us on the old alpine events, but that's okay. We're going to rock in Cortina. What were your takeaways from the Olympics? Any success for you?
Yeah, I didn't get into it. I really couldn't get into it in the same way for some reason that I got into the last Winter Olympiad. The offerings weren't great at times. And, some people fed us some nice winners and the USA under gold. Actually, I called that a loss in the spreadsheet I'm just like, well, this is done. Like, there are legitimately a few decent chances where this is gone. So that was nice to get that in under the wire. But I didn't watch nearly as much as I did 4 years or 3 years ago or wherever we had Winter Olympics again. And boy, it really just does show that the Winter Olympics sucks so bad compared to summer. I watch so much summer. Like, I can't tell you how much.
Well, the timing is it's all about the timing. I mean, there's so much going on right now. You're rounding into college basketball, March Madness. Are you going to do your previews of all the different college small conferences?
Started digging into that right now.
Yeah, this is high season for mid-major Andy, and you can't be distracted by curling and speed skating and some of these random sports here. So that said, overall the USA and the Norway unders got me back into the black, which was exciting because I needed that. A lot of my match by match stuff really just didn't pan out. I bet Alex Hall at some absurd prices in the big air. He goes on and wins the slope style. So that was kind of the nature of the game for me in the Olympics. I didn't hit many big prices. I thought it was going to be more chaotic, more long shots winning, but it was kind of like a weirdly blend of chalk and then, kind of top 5 choices pretty much won everything. Nothing that was like a truly, absolutely insane shocker that I can think of off the top of my head, at least that anyone that was taking a meaningful bet. Irene Schouten was my MVP of the Olympics, the Dutch long track speed skater. She was my Lisa Carrington of the Winter Olympics. Lisa Carrington, of course, famously was a multiple gold winner in the kayaking events, flatwater kayak, flatwater canoe, flatwater kayaking event. She was a dynamo at the Summer Olympics. And Irene Schouten.
I'm so over the Olympics
and the women's. So, all
right. I do remember that flatwater kayak gal, though. That was money. Like, she was mispriced and she was just running through people.
Okay. Well, we put a book. We closed the book on Beijing 2022. It was kind of a mess of an Olympics from top to bottom. Glad to get out of there without losing my shirt.
Really, there weren't enough people talking about all the controversy bullshit too that we had. Like not that I want to rehash any of that, but like it was kind of messy with some of that stuff. I didn't care for. It's not like FIFA has done a great job but like an international organization like this needs to maybe have better rules in place as far as what it felt like they're just making stuff up as they went.
Which controversy is kind of first thing that comes to mind for you?
I mean the Russian figure skater.
Sure.
Like that was the biggest one, and then the late that just was weird. Like if she gets on the podium, nobody else gets to. Like who came up with that idea? I don't know.
I don't know. the weird thing about that is almost certainly in the middle of the summer or even next year at some point, they're going to strip the gold medal from the team Russian event.
Yeah.
And you know who will get it? Team USA. That will be their 9th gold medal.
And bookmaker's going to come back for you on that one.
I'm going to withdraw those funds before that gets there.
This is...
I'm not going to worry about it. Not worried about it. What's done is done. So Olympics over. Moving on to new sports. Actually, real quick, did you have any kind of closing thoughts on the Genesis? Was that a tournament that you did well at?
I didn't bet much. I thought I would. I just didn't have time. Like, now that we are truly through football, through everything, and I'm caught up with some college basketball stuff, like, this is a tournament. It's a bad week to be like, I'm going high volume on this one, but I'm going to really have time. If you don't get to matchups early, you get the worse of the number, and that's always been annoying to me. So I'm ready to go full bore on golf, bet golf a little harder like I used to, and really didn't play much, did some DFS, scratched out a few bucks there.
Ooh, look at you.
I messed up mass importing or mass entering a contest or two, and I ended up in 50-50s, which I know it turned out like I didn't have. Well, that you accidentally enter a 50-50, you usually get like 4th place, which just pays the same as like 5,000th place. But it didn't turn out too bad. I ended up making a few bucks. My golfers did okay. Xander didn't win, and it was a little boring with the wire win, but it's a guy I like. I like watching Neiman. I was glad to see him do well.
Yeah, he's a guy I've always kind of pulled for. I was glad to see him win that title also.
He is your top South American now.
He's been the top South American for me for a year and change. I bet him top South American, I think, at all 4 majors last year. Or did he do he did do the Masters, I believe. All right, well, let's talk about betting a new sport because everybody's into this now. What do you think? Take me back in time to when you were a relative novice bettor and your football season came to an end and your accounts were flush with winnings from a successful Super Bowl handicap, or just maybe you got an anthem tip and you got a bunch of under money on your anthem or over money, whatever it was. What happens to you in the immediate aftermath of the football season being over as a novice bettor?
I think that's you start, especially now, not even like 3-4 years ago when I was maybe a little newer. There wasn't quite the amount of content that's out there, but like right now, you go on your Twitter feed and YouTube or TikTok, Instagram Reels. Fuck, there's even LinkedIn touts now. Like there's somebody telling you what to bet in every sport. Like you can find, hey, here's a hot, and I mean, we're guilty of this too. We have daily shows that we talk about. This is stuff we're actually betting though. I think there's a lot of shows out there where people are just come up with something to bet. You're not actually having to bet this. Don't worry about it. But there's so much information out there that just like, oh, like this guy's betting NBA. I should bet NBA. And I think a good chunk of the listeners, viewers do like to take an analytical approach. It just, this goes back to one of the modeling episodes we did so many years ago where it was just like, man, you know what the hardest part of modeling is? It's building that first, like entering that
infrastructure.
It's really taking the first step because it seems like it seems like such a daunting task because there's such a big checklist of things that you need to figure out. And infrastructure is a good way to put it. Like you need to come up with, where am I pulling my data? What data am I pulling? How am I manipulating it? What am I after here? Am I building power numbers? Am I building an ELO rating? Am I building, what exactly am I doing? With golf, tennis, basketball, UFC is, I don't think anyone really models UFC. They just kind of make fares based off tape. We've talked to some guys. If somebody has like an ELO rating for UFC, I'd love to hear how that works because so much of it is matchup. And I think the same thing with tennis, where, so much of it is matchup based. Even if you do have rankings, context needs to be thrown in there. So I guess like if you, Drew, were 10 years ago, let's just start with NBA. Let's say it's like 10 years ago. You don't have an NBA model. You don't. This is hard to do, but try to push your knowledge out of your mind. And I do think we want to touch on like maybe bring up some mistakes you made early on and how to push through that. But like if you were just wanting to build a real basic NBA model and your goal was just to break even, where would you start?
Well, I guess not now. Not in the middle of February.
That's what I'm saying.
Not
Like
after football season
this is where
over.
people are at, though. This is where people are at, and
sure.
this is what they're forced to do.
For sure. And I think that was kind of where I was leading you, and what at least I remember from my experiences when I was relatively new to this, which was whatever balance I had in my account when the football season was over, I would play it until I lost it all. Like, that was just kind of how it went, because withdrawing was such a huge pain in the ass back in the day, and it was all for recreational fun anyway. And
China,
you're just like, oh, I'll just dink away on college basketball, and then it's like, oh, I'm losing. Well, I guess I'm not going to deposit anymore. Forget about it, and then wait until fall and redeposit. Like, that was the deal.
I think you have a really good disclaimer for this entire rest of the show. Is if you were betting, let's just say $100 a game in football.
Sure.
Maybe you should scale that to 20 for basketball.
Oh, great call. Yeah, of course.
Just like if you want to
slash it in 5 by 5 by 10, you name it. Yeah.
Really, the true way, if you do want to build a new model, you want to build up some rankings and do some betting, the real way to do it, besides actually back testing, if you want to be forward doing it going forward, the real answer is to bet on paper. To test some stuff out, like not bet at all. Just say these are the 3 things I'm betting tonight, and start tracking how it does. Look at the markets, track some of that. But I think there's just enough people that are going to want to, maybe add a new sport at this point. Where, I mean, the true answer is don't start betting the NBA February 21st. Like, that's a bad idea.
Or college basketball. Like, if you enter these markets now, they are as informed and as sharp as they are all season long. There are not a ton of actionable angles that aren't well known by the market makers in these markets right now. And anyone that's been grinding any of these sports that are ongoing has an enormous advantage against you. And if you look at a line and you're like, well, I don't understand why this line is that way, I have some basic number that tells me it should be that, like, you're almost certainly are kind of getting the worst of things. I would guess almost certainly. Like, if there's something you don't understand, well, why these guys are hot? Why are they 5 points off? Like that kind of like logic, the way you think about problem solving when you're in a new market like this, where other people have kind of become market shapers, you could get yourself into trouble very, very, very quickly. So scaling down to 0.5, 0.2 or 0.1x is probably smart. I always, betting on paper is fine. I can't do it. I can't do it.
So I'd rather scale to an embarrassingly small amount than to bet on paper, because
absolutely.
And it's easier to track too. Like, you can you don't have to go
copy
look
and paste your results.
Go look at the betting account. So
yeah,
I think the true answer is don't do it. But if you want to, and you're gonna, if you are smart enough to scale your betting completely down, you want to get into the NBA, even though it's way too late and it's a bad idea, where would you start? Jeff brings up a good point. Scrapable data sources are always the biggest hurdle. And I will say something real quick.
Yeah.
I'm not great. I'm not some computer whiz. I do okay, and I've learned a lot about Google Sheets, and YouTube and Google are your friend for finding ways to make your sheets do certain things with certain numbers.
Yes,
and they are amazing, especially some of the add-ons with Solver if you want to add that to Excel. But the biggest thing I have trouble with is when websites have problematic formats for scraping, and I am not knowledgeable enough in coding to do that. There's a website called Fiverr, and for like $15, I paid some fella in Algeria who was great about and I gave him a website. I told him exactly how I wanted the format to come out.
Yep.
And he completely built this scraper for me, and I tipped him a bunch, because it's like, this is crazy that you can get this done for this cheap. And maybe it was super easy for him. He seemed like, oh yeah, I'll just do that. I'll get back to you in like an hour.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to be said for learning how to do that. I think that'd be great. But also, if you don't want to spend hundreds of hours learning coding,
sure,
you can get yourself a nice little scraper built by someone much smarter than you.
Okay, so two things. First of all, Sign Collectibles asked if I like Cressy tonight at plus 110. I do not. I did not see value on the dog in that one. I think Dimitrov, he's had a miserable season, but I like him to do something here in Acapulco. Cressy, on the other hand, busted out in Melbourne, but has shown us nothing since. He's a little bit he's on my sketch list right now. The second thing I wanted to bring up was going back to your original question of like, okay, what are some kind of go back into the time machine, some of the stuff that I went through early on trying to build an NBA model. And, like kind of took the same approach that I had for NFL, which was I need to come up with some way of finding efficiency numbers at a team level that I can combine to get a power rating effectively. And I didn't really have respect for what a market fair was or a market power rating was at the time. I just was sort of like, I need some efficiency stats. Let's get them. For football, I used to just, go with the DVOA, right, from Football Outsiders. Like that was the Bible. And I was like, well, it's already been adjusted for strength of opponent and, and situational, third and one converting is, a 1.5 yard run is more valuable than a 5 yard pass on 3rd and 6, blah, blah, blah. So getting team level efficiency stats was the first thing I tried to track down. And yes, guess who does that? A guy named John Hollinger used to just dump all of that stuff on ESPN's website, and you could go there and copy and paste the efficiency stats and put them into an Excel sheet and then mash them together in a way that you were like, okay, well, it says pace is this for this team, pace is that for that team. Let's average those. That's our estimated pace. And then our offensive efficiency is blank points per 100 possessions. Defense is blank. We'll mash those together. This is the expected offensive efficiency for this team. Defensive, okay, projected score is blank. It's like, okay, we'll put a little home court advantage sprinkle on top and, a little injury adjustments and off we go. And first lesson I learned was you got to, if you are counting on someone else computing those statistics for you, you're at their will. You're at their whim.
Yeah.
They don't update them for a couple of days. You're kind of screwed. And, and then even beyond that, I realized pretty quickly, like, oh, cool. So Hollinger stuff is average over the whole season. But like this team hasn't had their best player. Let's use the Golden State Warriors, for example. If you're using the Golden State Warriors team defensive efficiency statistic that's based on the full season, and they haven't had Draymond Green for the last month, like that team has a very different expected defensive efficiency considering who is out on the court than what you would get from a season-long average. And so then I kind of figured out the hard way, like, oh, I have to compute these myself. Yeah. And that way you can do things like heat index. You can do things like, well, let's look over the last 5 versus the season average. Which teams are heating up? Which teams are cooling off? Is it related to the strength of opponents? Blah, blah, blah. Like all those questions you can ask and answer if you are calculating those statistics yourself.
Yeah, I think definitely, like you said, the deeper you can get into trying to figure out ways that are just beyond the efficiency numbers, like you said, weighting more recent games heavier, because really, like I thought about what you just said. You take the 2 paces, you average them, you throw in the home court advantage, you take the offensive and defensive efficiencies, you mash them together. You do that in college basketball, you're just gonna end up with the Ken Pom number. Like you're just gonna end up with the same thing that KP came up with.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be probably pretty close to market. It's gonna be close to him. If you really want to do that, just pay the $13 a year and get Ken Pom, and he has his scores in there. I think the biggest step forward you can make after you find some stats that you can scrape. In this case, honestly, the NBA website has some pretty decent, individual stats if you want to get into the weeds on that.
But like an absolute wealth. It's crazy.
It is crazy how much is on the actual NBA analytics stats website. But find your sites, work on your scraping, get to a point where you have some stuff built together. And then I think your second step with any of these is tracking the market. Like that's the second step that I don't think a lot of people get to once they actually start building their numbers. Like realizing where you need to start looking for context is so much easier if you know that the market has consistently been cold on a team. And again, it can be short term. Like if a team has been bet against 3 days, 3 games in a row, what have you, or the under just keeps getting hammered early in the week versus, I mean, we can go to the NFL, like the Eagles thing. Like there's just knowing what the market forces at work are, knowing that, a team has been, I mean, to the point of it just being market entry. You can fully disagree with the market. I'm fine with that. Be the buyback. That's not the wrong, just because the market thinks something constantly, that doesn't mean it's right all the time. You can disagree with the market based on what you did, what you've put together, but knowing how the market's likely to react can help you a lot with, with your entry point. If you really think this is an over game and you think just based on what you've seen, the market is probably going to bet down anyway, wait, then you'll have a chance to wait. Like it's not only going to just help you, with figuring out your plays, it'll definitely help with market entry, especially with a really efficient market like the NBA.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things to add to that. I agree with everything you said there. And certainly the NBA.com stats dashboard is bananas. Like, let's just, you can sit back and say, like, there's luck involved in 3-point defense. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Oh, for sure.
Some teams allow lots and lots of open threes, and their opponents just don't make them. Some teams are very aggressively defending the 3-point line, but their opponents still happen to make those threes. And that can be one of the noisier parts of looking at team level data. And if I were to give you this link of the teams, the team stats dashboard on NBA.com, you could find it in 3 minutes. Click to what teams are giving up the most 3-point attempts with over 3 feet of space in the NBA, and then compare that to which teams are allowing the lowest percentage on open 3-point shots. And right there you have a potential, hey, this team is probably going to regress to the bad or to the good in terms of opponent 3-point attempt made, because they're giving lots of open 3-pointers. They're just not going in. And that sort of stuff is pretty useful to be able to dissect on the fly using their website. And I absolutely love that. The other key, yeah, go ahead.
I think there is something to be said for lack of a better term, research projects, mini models, like when you run into something like that, if it isn't just easy to see on the page, like some things will be, like there's definitely a case for, all right, I have my power numbers, I have my efficiency numbers, I'm tracking the market, I've scraped this, I'm building these, I think I'm making good positions. And you see something like that where or you have an inkling that something is happening that's causing you to maybe lose some games, or some value you thought was in the market is going the other way. I don't know, like a research project I just haven't quite got to yet, and I hope to someday, is like pace theory between two teams. And with college basketball, you have enough of a sample size. Obviously, there's what, 10,000 games a season, where you can look at like, just in the NBA, I think there's actually an answer to this because it's a much higher level sport. And I think there needs to be some partitioning in college basketball when I finally do this. But you have a fast paced team and you have a slow paced team. Solve the pace. What is the median likely pace for that game?
Yeah.
Like that, I think that answer is a little easier in the NBA than it is in college basketball.
We've had those conversations specifically and there are a lot of theories, a lot of theses. I don't have the answer for sure on how you mash pace because sometimes for that question in particular, if I'm doing a team level type of approach and I'm curious about what a fair pace projection is,
yeah,
I will take three different hypotheses, test them all, and if they all agree if all three say over, then you have consensus regardless of your methodology, then you're on sound footing. If one says over, one says under, one says fair, then you don't really have an edge on your total, right? But I definitely averaging the two teams pace either using some sort of time decay so that you're getting their way that they are playing currently. Because if you look at any pace, pace data, game by game data over the balance of an NBA season, it goes down from week 1 to game 1 to game 82. It is a descending slope. And that is because the game gets, guys get tired. The fatigue starts to build in and the game gets slower, or games mean more later in the season potentially.
I like how we just pivoted to just talking pace because it is the most interesting thing.
No, it's absolutely fascinating.
Well, and the thing is too, like, and Drew, I think again it's a whole different game because you have a limited amount of teams. But let's say again you have a top 5 pace, a bottom 5 pace.
Yeah.
Both teams are very good though. Both teams are going to be hosting a playoff series.
Yes.
Now you have a top 5 pace, a bottom 5 pace. One team's very good, and the other one's a lottery team. Like, it's different questions. And I think with the the disparity between who's the worst team in the NBA?
Magic
Pistons?
or the Pistons. Yeah.
Depending
Depending on the day.
The disparity,
right now it's the Magic.
and it's the same thing we talk about with NFL and college football. The disparity between, just say like the Nets and the Pistons is much different than Gonzaga and Mississippi Valley State. Like, you can have a much bigger disparity, and that's where it gets so tricky in the preseason. Like preseason, I mean, before we get into conference play with some of these weird matchups and just trying to get a grip on this. That's where I think, with the amount of data that you can pull off the internet now, you can really have some fun with trying to solve this. I think that's half the fun. It's just trying to solve, like, if a really good team with a high pace plays a really shitty team with a high pace, is it still a high pace?
Somebody out there may have solved this. I would be fascinated.
I'm sure someone has.
I will tell you that the couple nuggets that I have noticed, or at least that I think are correct, and you can test these yourself. I think in college basketball, the pace is dictated more by the better team.
It is.
That's my general feeling. In the NBA, pace is dictated more by team tendencies, which can be quarter and or half specific.
And pace, Brett has a good question too. There are some teams that they run a fast offense, but their defense is stingy, and so it makes it seem like they have a medium pace, an average pace, when they're actually running a very up-tempo offense. So then if they run into a team that wants to run an up-tempo offense, it can make their pace get completely thrown off. There's a lot of work to be done with this yet in college basketball.
Even more, like, and sometimes your pace expectation can get totally blasted if a team is hot or cold from 3. Because guess what? A made 3 means half court offense. A missed 3, you have a transition opportunity. And some teams,
you can have a rebound that's being caught outside of the 3-point line.
Yes, yeah.
And all of a sudden, instead of an inbound, you have a 3-on-1.
Yeah, gone. And that type of stuff is fascinating. And actually, like, the Milwaukee Bucks are the famous example that I can think of in the NBA, where pace can be very, very tough to pin down depending on opponent, because their half court offense can be a slog. And their transition offense is utterly unbelievable. And you get very different pace when their opponents are missing 3s. To kind of go back to my example off the top about missing wide open 3s. Right on the NBA shot dashboard, closest defender. I'm going to screen, and I just want to see teams that have no defender within 6 feet of the shooter. So wide open 3s. Would you be surprised to know that the team conceding the most attempts in the NBA is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who also happen to have the lowest percentage of wide open 3s made against them? If you were to tell me that is going to regress to the mean and that they are going to have teams making wide open 3s against them for the entire month of March and April, I subscribe to that.
Yeah,
100%. Especially because they're in like super tank mode right now. So.
And I think a lot of the pace discussion that we honestly, this is like the Michael Scott. This whole podcast is the Michael Scott. Sometimes I start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. We really didn't know where. I like where this is going. This is a lot of fun, and I think there's going to be some good comments, because there already have been. But that we're talking about pace as more of a function for totals, I think, right now.
Oh, surely, yeah.
But really, like Sam Lipscomb, longtime chatter, brings up, there's pace can absolutely play into the side as well, where there are teams that are just going to struggle on offense if they can't run the kind of pace they want, or if they're forced into a different type of pace. Like you see, the Texas and Abilene Christian was a
Great example.
super example in the tournament. That was a fun game, especially we had the dog in that one. But that I think that's the crux of what we're getting at here. Is I don't want to sound like a stupid, like, you remember the videos you would watch in science class when you're in like third grade? But like, be curious, kids, get out there and discover. But like, I don't want to sound like that guy, but that's kind of the crux of all this, is like trying to find the problems that you think are driving the market and and solving them. Yeah.
What a segue. Because here is my real advice to your question about what do you want to do if you want to start now. And that is, you get a market rating and you find a layer. You do your research project. You get curious. You find your one angle that you're like, oh, well, this is interesting. Like, there's going to be regression over this statistical category, or this isn't quite captured right by the market right now. But I have a baseline that is what market fair is to work with. And then you add that layer on top, and all of a sudden, everything looks like you have, all my prices are fair, except that one where there's something popping. And it's this wrinkle that I've added that is kind of a layer beyond what the market is capturing in general.
Well, even if you are building out something, there can be something as simple as finding out, like going back and looking at your fares for a long period of time and looking how they would have done. Like even taking ones you didn't bet. Let's say you need a 5% edge to make a bet. Looking at all the stuff that had a 2 to 4%, 4.99% edge, looking at it, seeing how that would have done, and then breaking that into subcategories, looking at like, where's my numbers weak? Is there some sort of pattern? And again, this is a really simple example that is not going to be true for anyone likely, but like, let's say you have a big sample of totals and they do like 51%, not enough to beat the VIG. And you look at that and start to break down, like, which ones am I losing? And again, a real simple example is you have a ton of overs that are losing like 60% of the time when the spread is like, it's a big spread.
Yes.
Like something about bigger spreads, maybe like an arbitrary cutoff of like 10 or 15. When you bet overs in those, when your numbers are overvaluing something, that's what helps you get down to like what the root cause is. Because like losing 60% of those bets where you think it should be an over and the spread is big isn't a problem. It's the result of a problem. Digging down into why that's happening is like, that's the fun part. And that's where you, I think, are able to solve some issues and find some additional edges.
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. And yeah, I think your example is good. Like if you're making a fair total price, that's assuming that both teams are going to be playing till, the full 40 minutes of the college basketball game, but it's a 15-point margin in the fourth quarter, then things are different, right? Whereas if it's a 8-point margin, then you're going to have a lot more fouling. You're going to have a very different game state, and those nuances there can be very impactful in projecting totals. So the point I was going with a market fair and finding a layer to add on top. This used to be tougher. You had to collect lots and lots of odds. You needed multiple weeks of data, and you needed to have like a time regressed model where you're literally just fitting what the market fair is for all of these teams relative to each other. And it gets complicated, obviously, when you get to college basketball because there's 350, 60 teams or whatever. But even for an NFL or NBA, like you need lots and lots of games and closing lines and, regressing to some market fair prices. Nowadays, it's easy because there is this thing called Unpredictable that does it for you for basically every sport. Ben Baldwin started posting this for NFL this season. First I had ever heard of it. I was like, oh, cool. Like finally someone else is doing this. And at first I was like, oh, great. The way to kind of back check my own work on this. And I was like, oh, it's the same. Oh, it's the same. Oh, great. I don't have to do this anymore. Like I can just go to this website and it's all there. And I think if you ever want a snapshot in time about how the market feels about any given teams, what a reasonable power rating is for any team in the NBA, any team in the NFL, Unpredictable has it. And it's very, very realistic. The only time I can tell you like, hey, watch out was when we got to the end of the NFL season and teams were, resting and, there was player availability question marks were swirling. They weren't very reliable then. Otherwise, they were very, very, very close to what I would have calculated independently and what other people we talked to would have said, market fair was. So now you can click on the betting market rankings for the NBA. Their number one team is the Phoenix Suns. That probably is about the same as anyone who's out there doing some clickbait power ranking post, which is based on the fact that they have the most wins and losses in the NBA. Like Suns are going to be your number one team. No doubt about it. Are they number one by a lot? No, not really. In fact, they are only number one right now, currently market-wise, a little bit over Utah. And now some of that is just because of who Utah has played coming into the All-Star break. I don't think realistically, the market respects Utah, especially their defense now that Rudy Gobert is back. But Phoenix number one, Utah number two. Andy, you want to guess who number three is?
My Bucks.
No, it is the Boston Celtics. And in fact, the Boston Celtics not too long ago were number one. And what is crazy is that anyone who was kind of keeping up with market ratings, anyone who was going to Unpredictable regularly, saw the Celtics at the top of this chart about 3 weeks ago. And they were like, my God, the market has so much respect for these guys. This is incredible. And then it was about a 2-week lag between seeing the market saying this is what's right and everyone who was in the space commenting all at the same time, like, wow, the Celtics are really good. Like, you know what I'm getting at, right? Like you caught wind of that.
Yeah, it was kind of like
right before they lost the Pistons.
Yeah, that was a hilarious timing for.
Yeah. So without question,
Adam Silver's cousin.
It was fascinating to see the. I'll put up the site here so you know what I'm saying. Unpredictable stats.unpredictable.com/rankings/nba.php. This gives you a great snapshot of what any games, game generic points favored on a neutral setting. So exactly what you would want in terms of what is a fair power rating. They give you offensive generic points favored, defensive generic points favored. So if you're curious, well, what is it about the Celtics that's so great? Amazingly, they have the best defense in the NBA right now. And if you know how, this is, of course, Marcus Smart pre-injury is influencing a lot of that. And Robert Williams is, his impact has been amazing. They have two incredible defensive wings, and their starting five when healthy is absolutely dynamic. And the market has incredible respect for that defense. And that is driving the fact that their average generic over-under is about 215, one of the lowest in the NBA. Flip side of that, you want to guess who the number one offense in the NBA is right now, Andy? At least market-wise?
Boy, I don't watch enough NBA, Drew. Just Timberwolves.
It is the Memphis Grizzlies.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Grizzlies are number one right now, 5.7 points over average on the offensive side of things. That decent, a little bit better than the Bucks, a little bit better than the Minnesota Timberwolves are number three.
Oh, how about that?
How about that?
I don't think I told you this. I brought it up with Alex the other day on Brown Bag, but going to the Wolves Sixers game Friday.
Oh, hell yeah.
Timberwolves game in a long time. I'm like, and my daughter's like, she doesn't understand like who's good or not. She's like, is it going to be good? Are there going to be good players? And I'm like, man, there's probably like 3 Hall of Famers in this game somewhere down the road. Like, there's a really decent chance that with good careers, all 3 of those guys end up. And I'm like, most of them are on the other team though. That's not going to be good for us, but we'll still have fun. But the Timberwolves. That's fun. It's maybe a team on the rise for me at least.
Great question from Holt. Do the Brooklyn Nets apply to all of this? What we're talking about is current market price for a head-to-head, not globally. What are their chances of winning a title? Is that distinction clear, Andy?
Yeah, I think again, I'm mixing up if it was you or Alex that I was talking about. Like those things are so very, very different in the NBA or any sport that has a 7-game series. Like a head-to-head in one game is a wildly different price than a team to win multiple 7-game series and win the title. Like it's not that like the Suns are at the bottom of something on top of the other, but they are different prices for sure. And I will just really quick for anyone podcast listening, I know Drew's putting up some websites here in the YouTube video. I'll put them in the YouTube comments or the YouTube description if you want to go find some of these links to Predictable and some of the other websites we mentioned. You can go find those.
Yeah, and I guess I think I have noticed at least Unpredictable tells you right at the top last time they did their update. It reflects the latest lines that are available in general. It's not always the sharpest market making books that they're using from what I can tell you. They just maybe scraping generic, FanDuel, DraftKings, who knows, but and it reflects kind of the most recent games. So in the case of the Brooklyn Nets, because they haven't played recently with Kevin Durant, they have been like meaningful dogs to bad teams like the Washington Wizards, right? Like the Nets were dogs to the Wizards, I think, not that long ago. And so that fact alone would give you the Nets and the Wizards are pretty similarly rated at 22nd and 23rd. Does that mean that the Brooklyn Nets have no chance of winning the title? That's laughable. If Kevin Durant is fully healthy and Kyrie Irving is available to play and they're in a best of 7 series, they are going to be a tough out. Everyone knows this. Any ELO model, if you go to 538 right now, now I got to go look. What do you think 538 has the Nets chances to win? Because 538 just takes their ELO and just plugs and chugs. And their ELO is influenced by a month of very, very unimpressive play by the Brooklyn Nets. You want to guess what their chances are to win the title?
I mean, my fare would be like 15%.
Your fare would be 15% to win the title. How about to win the East for the Nets?
I mean, double that, 28. That's not double.
Okay.
So I'm guessing they're at like 8 and 12 or something horrible.
Their chances to win the finals right now, 0.9%. little less than 1% chance that the Brooklyn Nets are going.
What's the market price? I just assumed they're like 6 to 1 or something.
I think it's maybe even a little shorter. They were co-favorites.
I went with like 6 to 1. That's 15-ish.
I think they're like co-favorites with the Suns around 4 to 1-ish.
Okay, so my 15 is low compared to the market.
Yeah, you're cold on these guys. You're cold on the Nets. But the market, of course, market's telling you that the Lakers have a 4% chance to win, which is somewhat hilarious. Because they're probably not going to make the playoffs.
They're like a 9 seed, baby.
But ultimately, I shouldn't laugh because I would like them not to make the playoffs. But I do not want to mush people who have no tickets on yes/no playoff market for the Lakers. The current, you're right, 6 to 1 at bookmaker for the Nets. That slipped a little. Okay. 4 to 1 is the Suns. The Bucks are about 6 to 1. The Warriors about plus 460. Warriors coming in a little bit. For the title, I saw some 6s and over. I guess that's the Chris Paul. That's the Chris Paul injury effect. Warriors coming down. Even though it's going to be 4 weeks before we see Draymond Green back on the court. And if you think Chris Paul's impact is important, Draymond Green, my goodness, boy, does he matter for them in a defensive capacity in a best of 7 series, particularly in the finals if they get there. Yeah, so the 538 ELO stuff is insane. There's probably a way to improve it if you click around their site. Oh no, if you just use the straight ELO forecast, then its chances of winning the title drop to less than 0.1%. Okay.
I feel like Kevin Durant plus like 4 G Leaguers has a higher percentage than that.
They are giving the Nets a 41% chance of making the playoffs and a 0.5% chance of making the finals and a less than 0.1% chance of winning the title.
That's
Those
not
are
a
all low.
website. I'm not gonna put
Those
that
are all
website
low.
in the show notes.
Yeah, no, don't put that one in there. They need to fix this. Come on, guys. You didn't learn anything during the Warriors nonsense that
Did
happened all
so
those
well
years
with the
ago.
election stuff. Like,
I know it.
um,
It's tough. Anyway, so check out Unpredictable. It's not perfect, but it gives you as clear a picture of what the market feels about teams at any given time than anything else that's publicly available that I can tell you. I mean, obviously, like if I was diligently cranking out content and putting up my power numbers every day, I would say this is better than Unpredictable, but I'm not doing that. I don't know anyone who is. So that said, let's talk about player level. You want to talk a little player level?
I was gonna say, and maybe it's a good segue. Let's spend a little time because again, if you are just about to fire up scraping and building some efficiency and power numbers for NBA, I don't know if you're ready to fully go player level on it, but I think it's a good segue into, and I don't want to spend forever on this because we could do 2 hours on each of these sports, but going to individual sports from a team sport. Like we talked a lot of NBA, we talked a lot of college basketball. I want to segue to golf and tennis to close her out after we do this and talk about some differences and just how much context you need to be applying to those kind of sports once you start throwing numbers at it at first. So player level. If obviously I don't do this, I could not possibly do this for college basketball without a team of interns. I can't imagine. It would take a long time to build this, and it would be a pain in the ass because if you follow Jordan or any of the the good college basketball Twitter accounts, constantly they're tweeting out like, "Oh, guess what? This guy's in sweats right now. He's not playing." Like, I can't imagine doing that on a Saturday with 150 games, figuring out which of these players are out. And truthfully, at real lower levels, none of them matter.
Yeah.
But in the NBA, like you said, they very much matter. And
In the
again,
NBA,
our friend Alex very, very much will. Karl Anthony Towns, a good example. He comes up again as a player whose impact is high enough on both ends of the court that Alex will base a total bet on if he's in or out. Like if he's in, I'm taking this. If he's in, I'll actually take this under or this over.
Yeah, there are 3 ways in which you can evaluate player impact. There are sites that give you a brilliant way to deconstruct on-off. There, and that is instructive because certain players. Oh God, what's a good example? Like you would be blown away by how much a guy like DeAndre Hunter for the Hawks matters to the total. And it's not even what he's doing as much as it is when Trae Young is on the court, he needs a DeAndre Hunter so badly to make up for his defensive woes that when those two are out there together, the Hawks have reasonable team defense. When Trae Young is out there alone, he is getting absolutely torched and picked on and bullied. And it is it's a matter of like, I could feasibly see expecting Trae Young and DeAndre Hunter to go and the talks total at 225 and Hunter comes out and the adjustment should probably be 8-ish points to the total, which sounds insane. And the market is never going to move that far.
Insane.
It's never going to move that far, ever. There is a point where someone will be the buyback before it gets to the full adjustment it ought to be sometimes for some of these players who have really, really, really big player level impact on points. And I think that probably the people who, the arbitrage players, the people who have the injury information first, who are betting the over before the news is public that Hunter's out, they're probably coming back with 5-point move, 4 maybe. Like there's a buy point for all of that stuff, and it never gets to the full of what it should be. We saw this with Karl Anthony Towns a million years ago because his impact both offensively and defensively was like one direction.
If you can get way ahead of an injury news, or like even if you're not ahead of the injury news, if you have guys like that who will impact the total based on their availability, you can usually make a pretty good educated guess about their availability just by looking at the market. Like, hey, the under just got smashed. Like people in the know this guy's in or out.
Who's in? Yeah, who's available?
Which and that's a real quick segue into that.
Sure.
This is something I've thought about. Is say, well, how's that useful, Andy? Like, if you are not the guy who finds out about the injury first and is able to bet into the number, which is bad at that point, and you see it like, oh, the total just moved 3.5 points, and everything about that points to let's just point to Karl Anthony Towns being in or out.
Yeah.
If that player is out, I think, and again, this is a softer market that might get you limited if you hit too hard, but if you can make good predictions about player availability based on the market moves in some cases like that, I think there's a mint to be made in player props. If you can say like it just I think there's just little stupid things like that I think about all the time. Like if somebody is feasibly out based on how the market's reacting, like, well, what can I do with that? I'm the last to market then. I think there is something to be said for go look at some player props for somebody who's getting more minutes then.
In the NBA, the injury info is pretty quick. The market reacts pretty quickly. And these are some general statements I have about this. Don't take this as the gospel by any stretch of the imagination. The market tends to overreact to on a side when there's an injury news, and it tends to underreact to the impact on the total if it's a player that does impact the total. Does that make sense?
It does.
And here's the thing about the side, why that is. And our friend Spread Astaire coined this a million years ago in the basketball chat. The superstars. Back when he was right after he was done serving in World War II. He coined superstar subtraction, which is effectively the Ewing theory, but it's more of a gambling related Ewing theory. When you take out a star player from a given team, the distribution of that usage tends to be under captured by any numerical model, right? Like, oh, the guy that's taking those shots now, like you can use the data you have on him to tell you how efficient that guy's going to be with the ball in his hands. But now that his usage has changed, it's going to be different. You don't really always know what that's going to be. And in super narrative nation kind of sentiment, those guys know it's their time to shine. And it's like, hey, I'm going to be getting the usage tonight, man. Like, this is my time to really, dial up the best stuff I got so that I can kind of make sure that the coach knows he needs to keep me more involved and I can get paid and blah, blah, blah. Like there is almost always a weird sort of bump in production from players you don't expect in those sort of situations. And it tends to kind of even mask, especially in the middle of a grind of an NBA season, game 56 of 82, like, oh, one guy decides he's going to try super hard. That actually kind of matters. Like as crazy as that is. And so a lot of times a superstar goes out and a team
context playing
better.
Yeah. You never know, it really use some context because there are certain players who react differently to those situations. Like there's a difference between like Dion Waiters and other players when they're decide it's their time to shine. I just don't know enough about NBA.
Speaking of time to shine, you know whose time decided not to shine? Brandon Nakashima. Now, this guy, like, talk about overrated by the market and a complete divorce from reality in terms of what a fair rating for Nakashima is. The market cannot get enough of Brandon Nakashima in the future of American tennis. And he closed minus 1,000 today against Gojewicz, and he's losing. He's going to lose in straights. Amazing. Unbelievable. Sorry for that little segue, but
He's only 20. It's still time, but
there's a thing that goes on with the young tennis players as
Yeah.
they're coming up. People like hitch their wagon and they're like, I'm gonna be there when he wins his first big, takes his first skin here. And it's not happening for Nakashima right now. Holy crap.
no, for every
is wildly out of form too.
for every Alcaraz, there are 15 Brandon Nakashima.
Yes.
Like, it's just
great comp. Ooh, that was
like
good.
there are players who absolutely, deliver. And let's go to tennis because we've spent a long time in basketball, and eventually I should go home. But
one thing I want to mention real quick about player level stuff, check out Drip and Darko. Those are your two best player level ratings. And if you want to know advanced box score, neither one does a perfect job. I have my qualms with both, and we could talk about it offline if you want. Time decay is a problem with Darko.
I think we're gonna do a bunch more NBA, strictly NBA podcasts. Let's put a pin in those and get into that. I have questions for you on both of those.
Let's save some.
But yeah, tennis,
keep some more
tennis and golf. Tennis and golf actually have quite a few stats available as well. A lot of the golf stuff is paywalled. You could be lucky like me and have access to PGA feeds now, which is going to be pretty awesome. But yeah, there are plenty of sites where you can get free, real low-level golf data. Even the PGA website is going to have some. It's going to be incredibly difficult to scrape from there. But I think the biggest difference is in, if you get to golf, and there are intangibles out there, and I am comparing it to tennis and the team sports we've talked about. There's really no defense. Golf takes out it makes it sound like easier, and it's not. Golf is incredibly hard to beat. But there's a whole thing you take out. Like in tennis, you play defense. You're playing against each other. And every team sport, there's a defensive in baseball, basketball, defense, everything. With golf, it is a little different because it's just the man versus the course.
Yep.
But tennis, I feel like, and we'll start with that, is you've been able to put some rankings together. But I think, again, like we talked about UFC, there's so much context. And again, a little analog to golf. It is still man versus course a little bit with surface because there are players who play differently on each surface. But I think that's once you get big enough sample size on guys, you're able to quickly and easily analyze a player's different tendencies on surfaces. But then, and I think you're better at speaking to this, you have guys who just don't handle, they don't handle certain players' shots, certain players' serves. A strong forehand, a nasty slice,
a left hand,
a lefty. There are players who do not play well against left-handed players, or players who handle it quite well. Yes, yeah. And that's where I'll put this one in the notes for sure. Tennis abstract, a lot more sorting than probably scraping, but there's so much free information on tennis abstract, and you can get super granular on that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the greatest free resource for any sport that I know of.
Probably.
Period. And the reason I say that is because the gap between tennis abstract and the next best tennis data out there is the Grand Canyon. The next, I remember when I was like, oh, I'm going to put together a tennis model. Let's go to the ATPtour.com and see what kind of stats they have. Like, you still go there. It's been a while since I've been there, but I bet you if you still go there today and look up stats, it's like Ivo Karlovic leads in all-time aces. Yeah. It's like, what the hell is that? What is this? What are these stats? Why in the world would I care if Ivo Karlovic has all-time aces? Like, give me some performance stats. What is going on? And the other thing, and they turned all of their data over to IBM at some point, and they let Watson build like an absolute dog shit player model that was spitting out probabilities that was so bad. And I think that whole thing might have gotten abandoned or forgotten at some point. Hopefully it did. But tennis abstract, on the other hand, has just an absolute wealth of data. Sackman keeps a GitHub repository, so you don't even have to scrape it. You can just pull the whole package whenever you feel like it. And if you don't want the whole package, you just want a nice graphical user interface where you can pop like, oh, let's see what Sissipas playing in Acapulco. Has he ever played this event before? You can cue just his results from Acapulco. It's like, oh, well, he played last year, was his first time here. Oh, he made the final. Oh, he lost to Zverev. Oh, on the way to his final, he had a great run, man. Oh my God, he destroyed Perry, destroyed Isner. He had a tough 3-setter versus Felix. He destroyed Musetti, and then he had a very close call against Zverev in the final. Like, that gives you a little bit of an indication of what, like, oh, well, like, was he in good form at the time? Let's zoom out a little bit, look at his results in March last year and just see, that sort of ability to kind of quickly go through results and have some performance stats in there, like double faults percentage, ace percentage. I like the dominance ratio a ton. Dominance ratio is a better indicator to me of a player's performance in a given match than looking at things like breakpoints converted. Breakpoints are a little bit misleading.
Noise. There's a lot of it's a lot of randomness in there.
It's a lot of randomness in there, and there can be some skew where, like, if you have one long game where you have 6 break chances and you didn't convert any of them, and you're 0-6 on break, but then every other return game you lost to love, like, maybe you weren't really that close. Right? Maybe it wasn't that close of a game, even though you're and then you say, like, oh, my dog, he was 0-6 on break point chances. It's like, well, yeah, the guy was playing with them.
Well, that's the thing, that's what's so difficult about this, and that like your dominance ratio or dominance rating, whatever it is, it's the DR column on Tennis
DR
Abstract.
Dominance ratio, yeah.
But
percent of return points won divided by percent of serve points lost.
It does a better job of contextualizing that, because again, like in your instance there, it's like, man, did the guy have did he switch rackets after that? Was it just a really bad ball?
Yeah.
Like, was he having just an off service game and needed a drink of water? Like, when you see that and you look at the overall stats and can't put context to it, it does throw an unfavorable shade on a player that probably played a lot better than you thought.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so you could look at the Zverev Tsitsipas final from Acapulco last year. Tsitsipas converted.
It's funny, I clicked on Tsitsipas. You clicked on Zverev?
Yeah. Well, I clicked on Tsitsipas also. Okay. He was like right up there at the top.
Yeah.
Tsitsipas only converted 2 of his 8 break chances, but he saved 9 of his 12. And so it was like a little bit of you can blame, like, oh, you just couldn't get the break you needed, blah, blah, blah. Like, he did quite well defending his own serve. And in fact, if you look at the dominance ratio, it's pretty clear that, he realistically, like, he was the lesser player in that match. Like, he lost fair and square. It wasn't a matter of he couldn't get his breaks converted.
Yeah, I like how you said it. He lost fair and square. It's like how we do box score deep dives on college or pro football games. Like, you go look at this and say, like, man, was this a win they deserved, or a cover they deserved, honestly, in some cases. And looking back at rear-facing back testing, however you want to say it, I think it is super important in tennis, because a lot of it is just, well, the guy's in the semifinals, he must be good. Like, did he deserve the last 2 wins? And I think there's a lot of cases where the prices are skewed.
Yeah. Okay. So the other resource that I think is worth pointing to for tennis folks, Odds Portal does a really, really, really good job of aggregating odds from all over the world, which is what you care about if you care about the tennis market, like what DraftKings prices or FanDuel prices have been doing over the balance of the day. I don't give a fuck. Like, it really does not. That does not move the needle for me at all. I am much more curious in case of, say, Brooksby Zverev. My fair, I opened that at 625. I looked at the other market openers. Fortuna in Czechoslovakia opened it at 588. Betsson in Sweden opened it at 526. So I was even a little higher relative to the other originators in some of the European markets there, it's gotten bet down. Like I think Zverev's probably going to go off in the 400 range at Pinnacle right now. So yeah, somebody really thinks Brooksby's got a chance. But yeah, I think looking at odds portal for global market information is very, very valuable. Oh, chance Czechoslovakia opens are minus 769, so they were on the fat side, so I was kind of more in line with them. But even better than that, like they have historic odds that are really useful as well. Like you can go back and get an entire money line odds for all of the matches at a major and kind of marry them with the tennis abstract stuff so that you can then take the data you grab from the GitHub, match market information to that, and then you're off and running.
I'm looking at Last Bet. Every time I go on odds portal, there's like a new sports book I've never heard of on one of these.
N1 Bet. Have you seen Paramatch? What's Paramatch? You ever heard of them?
Paramatch, it's down right now. Anyway, odds are not updating on there. Yeah. Their API feed's broken right now.
It's not Last Bet. It's Lass.
But now with two S's.
Last Bet. Yeah, no, I don't know. There's a lot of weird ones. Cure Bet. That's a good one. Dido Bet.
So let's get back to and maybe just a quick 5-minute primer on, and we've done this before, but the whole point of the podcast was like, what if you're not betting tennis? You joked about, and it wasn't joking, but you said you probably shouldn't jump into the NBA market this quick or at this point of the year.
Yes.
Tennis has so many players and so many moving pieces. If you haven't watched any tennis and don't know any of these names, I really think you might want to start doing that first. At least get a feel for how the game works. Everybody understands how basketball works, but I mean, maybe take a look at these websites, the tennis abstract, look at some of the stats, start to put some context to what they mean, and then maybe focus in on I don't know how would you start? Would you focus in on like a handful of players and start to track their markets? Or I'm trying to think what a good way to really dip your toes in.
Great question.
Without getting because there's so many players. I would stick to either the men's or women's. I would start with that.
Yeah.
Narrow it down by half.
Pick men's or women's, pick one tournament. Try to kind of dig in a little bit into one tournament. Understand the surface. What was the surface speed like at this tournament in years past? How does that compare with who has played well here, who has done poorly here? What are the current form of the players who are playing in this tournament? I think those are all important questions you can ask to give yourself a leg up on any of these. And I mean, upcoming the next round of tennis tournaments after these are wrapping, the next big one is Indian Wells, and Indian Wells is a hugely important, kind of sets the bar for a lot of players establishing themselves at the beginning of the season. It's a slow hard. So it's basically, it doesn't really give a huge advantage to the serve bots, or, doesn't really penalize the players who have shot construction and clay court skills. And yeah, I think Indian Wells is a great time to kind of get immersed into it. And it's a North American time window, so you can actually watch it. So tennis TV, a tennis TV sub is invaluable. I have it on in my office all day long. Which is great because there's tennis on all day long. Too. Yeah, pretty solid. Yeah, our guy Seb Corda struggling. And yeah, Sign Collectibles, you're right. I was curious, what was the closing price for Tsitsipas Zverev last year in the Acapulco final? And thanks to Odds Portal, you can click right through. And Tsitsipas closed minus 169 at Pinnacle. How about that? He was a meaningful favorite. He must have been favored by like two and a half games.
2.5.
Yeah.
You should be able to find that too.
Oh yeah, you can click over to
just handicap. A different tab.
Just different tab. Yeah, 2.5 was minus 103. Interesting. Yeah. Zverev in straight sets was
that's a
plus 350.
This is how you can tell we don't actually prep most times. Like when I said that, like what is the way to dip your toes into tennis? And really the answer is very slowly.
Very slowly, yeah. Although at the same time, No, I think this is
I liked how you said pick a tournament and then start looking at look at what a guy opens and look at what he closes, or a gal if you're betting the women's side, and then go back and look at the stats and see what you can see to determine, like, why do we think the market is looked at that, and then also look at the other, like, is there somebody check social, is somebody hanging on to an injury, does somebody have a really bad head-to-head versus this guy? Watch the match. Honestly, the announcers in tennis are so bad right now. I don't know if I'd listen to them.
If you want to listen to tennis, listen to the ATP radio.
That's
the radio broadcast is and at the slams, oh my god, the slams, the radio guys will give you so many nuggets that you don't get from the TV. It's absolutely wild. The last thought about dipping your toe into tennis water is find a 50-50 market to play. Don't just go start making fares and swinging away at the plus 300 dogs, or laying the juice on the minus 500 faves, or playing parlays. Like, find a 50-50 market to get involved with. If you think if you're coming up with fares and they're consistently biased to the dog, which is the way my model generally works, then find a way to attack a dog with value, that you can do better than just potentially losing the underdog bias extra big to the house. And that's to say, there are lots of underdogs who have a realistic shot to win a match, and sometimes realistic is not actually going to win that match, and so playing an over or playing a handicap is a better way of attack. And then
I like that too. Look at some 50-50 matches. You're not going to get minus 110 on a lot of those, but it's still
find some 50-50 markets.
Maybe a better way to gauge it. And again, it's just like anything, follow the market. And I think that the same thing goes for golf, and we'll close with that. There's a lot of fun to be had betting outrights in golf. It's so much fun to cash a big outright. It's very difficult. And a big thing I take away, and again, golf broadcasts, I've said nice things about the golf coverages here, but golf broadcasts in general, they say stupid shit all the time, especially now that they're trying to, shoehorn in some gambling talk. But anytime you hear some of these narratives of like, oh man, this guy won it last year, or he won last week, or it's so hard to do this twice in a row. No, it's not. It's not hard to win twice. It's hard to win a golf tournament at all. Like, it's a 150-man field. Like, it's not the reason is you won it last year. The reason is because there's 149 other people, and it's very difficult to shoot 4 very good rounds and not have anyone else do the same or better. Like, it's just very difficult. And I think until you can build good fares, it's super hard to play the outright market. I struggle with the outright market constantly. I had a fun year last year hitting a few, but it's something that I really do struggle with, and I enjoy head-to-heads. And, like Drew said with tennis, find yourself some 50-50 matchups and start handicapping. I think the same thing with golf. There's a wealth of stats out there. A lot of the subscription sites are pretty cheap. You're talking like $20-$30 a month for a bunch of stats if you want to play around there. And, start digging into a couple matchups here and there and determining, read some previews, get to know the courses. There's so many good previews that'll tell you like what the course makeup is, and you start to determine what matters there, and really just start making some prices and really follow the market again. Like we said this for everything, but it's such a good indicator, especially in golf. And I don't think CLV matters in golf as it does in golf matchups like it does in pro football. But you can really get a feel for, what the market is actually what matters. So with any sport, I think the first step is figuring out when the market's open, where they open. Like Drew was talking about Czechoslovakian books with tennis. He wasn't just goofing. That's the worldwide opener for a lot. Those numbers are soft and they're beat up right away, and you're not getting a chance to bet those obviously in the Czech Republic without a lot of finagling. But get to know who opens or golf first, where it opens, and where the sharp. It's bookmaker, most of the sharp numbers. But if you want to start tracking this, just take a snapshot or copy paste, scrape the bookmaker numbers into a spreadsheet on Monday or Tuesday when matchups come out, and then do it again Thursday morning right before tee off. And it's you don't have odds checker for golf matchups. It's tough finding some of the prices for them. Sometimes you have to do a little legwork, but getting to know like who's getting bet at a certain tournament, I think can help you along a lot through the single round betting markets later on in the tournament. If you know some people took some heavy money and maybe the guy didn't have such a great round one, you know that the sharp market in general like the guy, and if he played poorly and he didn't look good and some people are down on him and maybe you watch the tournament and it might have just been some bad luck here or there, a funny bounce.
He lost 3 strokes putting.
Yeah, something not sticky like putting. You could definitely find some good value on the I say in tournament markets. They're more round by round betting is what you'd want to call it. Like they're going to have matchups that are just for round 2. I think if you can have a good grip on where the market's going, you can find some value there. There's a bunch of different ways. Like again, find a problem and solve it for golf.
I love it. And maybe the most valuable thing really, if you are getting into, what you said, grab the market openers, grab them late in the week, compare. Like that exercise alone, doesn't matter how many years you've been doing this, you will see something valuable. Nobody ever does it. Nobody ever really talks about this, and it's not easy to tell people. It's a lot of work. Yeah. And
if you don't have this
doesn't make
automated,
for good content. It doesn't make for compelling, it doesn't make for compelling podcast or video or whatever. But if you can just get in tune with a market, you have put yourself into the 99th percentile of bettors.
And we're talking golf right now. This goes for every single sport you want to.
Every single sport, yeah.
And you know what the big part about this is? When you do this, a lot of the advice we're giving you is trying to solve issues and finding your way. When you track a market like this, it is not going to answer questions. It is going to create 500 more questions because there's going to be market moves every week that make no sense. And you need to go talk to, again, networking is important. Talk to other people who bet golf, see what they're seeing, try to figure out I hate the group think that happens sometimes on gambling Twitter, but figure out why, there's a possibility of some injury that wasn't talked about or something about this course that doesn't jive well with a certain player, why somebody's getting bet against when you think he should have been bet on. There's, again, it's always more questions than answers, but those are the questions that lead you to finding more answers down the road. And again, like I keep saying, that's the fun part.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Yeah. Break the market, and you're ahead of everyone else who's playing the game.
For sure.
All right, man. Good show. It was fun. Hour and a half.
We didn't sit and build a model for anybody, but I think that's kind of on you guys.
No, that was good. I think that was about as comprehensive a combo without any prep that we possibly could have laid on to put on tape.
I had fun with that. Hey, guess what? This is on YouTube. If you have any questions, I finally set it up so I actually will get alerts if people comment on the YouTube. So I will see those comments. If you have some questions, put it in the comments. Hit them up on Twitter. Hit us in the DMs, wherever you want, and we'll try to answer them as we can. We don't have all the answers. I struggle all the time, but I think it is exciting. It's an exciting undertaking, betting a new sport, and there's so much. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah, that's the tough part.
Seb Corda held serve. Look at that.
Look at him.
Fourth try is the charm. And yeah, as noted by Silent Collectibles, man, Fernando Verdasco.
Oh, that's a fun name.
He is a player that harkens back to his peak. When do you think Verdasco's peak was? In the tennis abstract ELO model tab. What's brilliant is you can go and look at what was his peak age in ELO. Verdasco, you got to guess?
12.
Rome 2010.
10, even further
12
back.
years ago.
Collectibles was closer. He said
Woo!
09.
Oh, no, it was Rome 2010 was Verdasco's peak.
Look at that. That's a long,
Crazy, man.
long time ago.
He looks old too. Actually, you know what? That was one of my other takeaways of the Olympics. Not that we want to make this podcast any longer, but a lot of old athletes did really well.
There's hope for us. There's hope for us.
All right.
Maybe I should enter a 5K. Been a while.
Ooh, now we're talking.
You
All
get
right, let's put a bow on it. Thank you, Dan.
Right.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah, Verdasco in 2009 made the semis of the Aussie. He made round 4 at the French, and he made the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open. He had a good year in 2009. How is it Verdasco never made it to the quarterfinals of the French Open? He made it to the